Welcome to the land of fire and, well, a bit of unfinished business. Azerbaijan's skyline, oh how it has grown rapidly. But you know, some projects have unfortunately turned into expensive disappointments. Take a look at Baku, the capital. It's a city that practically screams, "Look at me," with its gleaming flame towers and the almost alien-like Haydar Aliyev Center. It's the kind of architecture that makes you think the future has arrived, and it's wearing a very shiny, very expensive suit. This is a nation fueled by oil and gas money, eager to show the world it's a modern global player. And what better way to do that than with absolutely massive, eye-wateringly expensive construction projects? It's the international equivalent of buying a sports car during a midlife crisis. But here's the thing about ambition. Sometimes it writes checks the reality can't cash. For every stunning success story that gets plastered on a tourism brochure, there's often a less glamorous tale lurking in the shadows. A tale of projects that were announced with tremendous fanfare, consumed gargantuan sums of money, and then, well, just sort of stopped. They stand now as monuments not to progress but to overreach. These aren't just empty buildings, they're billion-dollar ghosts haunting the landscape. Silent reminders of dreams that were either too big, too impractical, or perhaps just a little too corrupt to ever see the light of day. So tonight, we're going to take a tour of Azerbaijan's most pointless construction projects. We'll go beyond the polished postcards and explore the skeletons in the nation's architectural closet. From man-made islands meant to house 1 million people to Olympic-sized stadiums that now host little more than tumbleweeds and regret. It's a story of grand visions and even grander failures. So grab some tea or something stronger, you might need it, as we dive into the world of Azerbaijan's spectacular and spectacularly pointless construction boondoggles. Let's begin with a project so ludicrously ambitious it makes Dubai look modest. I'm talking about the Khazar Islands. This wasn't just a plan for a new resort, it was a plan for a new city, built from scratch on 41 artificial islands in the Caspian Sea. The brainchild of a businessman named Ibrahim Ibrahimov, this project was pitched in 2011 as the new Venice, which is a bold claim, especially when your Venice is being built on an oil-rich sea known for its harsh weather, not its romantic gondola rides. The plans were, to put it mildly, insane. They included housing for 1 million residents, 150 schools, 50 hospitals, and countless shopping malls. But wait, there's more. Because of course there is. The centerpiece of this aquatic metropolis was to be the Azerbaijan Tower, a skyscraper projected to reach 1,050 meters. That's a full 200 meters taller than the Burj Khalifa, the current tallest building in the world. It was a statement of intent so loud it was practically screaming. The total estimated cost? A cool $100 billion. Yes, that's billion with a B. For that price, you could buy a small country, or at least a lifetime supply of very, very good caviar for everyone on Earth. The initial promotional videos were a masterclass in utopian fantasy. Sleek monorails gliding over pristine canals, happy families strolling through lush green parks, and yachts bobbing in sparkling marinas. It was sold as a self-contained paradise, a testament to Azerbaijan's limitless potential. Construction even began. A few buildings started to go up on the very first island, and for a moment it seemed like this absurd dream might actually be inching towards reality. The developer was confident, telling media outlets that the project was a sure thing, a beacon of future prosperity. Then, reality, as it so often does, decided to show up uninvited. The first major blow was the dramatic fall in global oil prices around 2015. Azerbaijan's economy, which is about as dependent on oil as a fish is on water, took a massive hit. Suddenly, finding the kind of colossal, sustained investment needed for a $100 billion sea city became significantly more difficult. It's one thing to fund a vanity project when oil is at $120 a barrel. It's quite another when it's hovering around 40. The money dried up. The initial investor, a Vesta concern, couldn't secure the foreign backing it desperately needed. Construction slowed, then sputtered, then ground to a complete halt. The project, which was supposed to be a symbol of a bright future, instead became a textbook example of what happens when you bet the entire farm on a single volatile commodity. The grand vision of a Caspian Venice began to look less like a dream and more like a fever-induced hallucination. Today, what remains of the Khazar Islands is a truly pathetic sight. A handful of lonely, half-finished apartment blocks stand on a desolate strip of man-made land, battered by the Caspian winds. They are the skeletal remains of a billion-dollar fantasy. The promised canals are just muddy ditches, the parks are patches of weeds, and the site of the world's tallest tower to be is just an empty plot of sand. It's a ghost town that was never even a town to begin with. The developer, Ibrahim Ibrahimov, has faced legal troubles and financial ruin. He went from being the visionary architect of a new world to a cautionary tale. The project is effectively dead, a massive, silent monument to hubris. It serves as a stark reminder that building your dreams on an artificial island is risky, especially when the financial ground beneath you is even more unstable than the seabed you're building on. So the Khazar Islands project, once touted as the jewel of the Caspian, is now little more than a collection of crumbling concrete and shattered ambition. It's a place where 1 million people were supposed to live, but where now the only residents are seagulls and the ghosts of ridiculously oversized architectural plans. A truly spectacular failure, on a scale that is, you have to admit, almost impressive in its own right. Next up, we have a project that sounds noble on the surface: Baku White City. The name itself is a masterpiece of public relations. It promises purity, modernity, and a clean slate. And a clean slate was desperately needed because the area it was built on was known as the Black City. For over a century, this district was the heart of Azerbaijan's oil industry, a polluted, toxic industrial wasteland filled with refineries, sludge, and the kind of environmental contamination that would give Captain Planet a nervous breakdown. The plan, launched in the late 2000s, was breathtaking in its scope. It aimed to completely remediate and transform 221 hectares of this industrial hellscape into a gleaming, modern, eco-friendly district. The promises were, as always, lavish. We're talking new residential complexes, business centers, a giant shopping mall, a beautiful new boulevard along the Caspian, and even a Parisian-style neighborhood complete with a Baku version of the Rue de Rivoli. The total investment was estimated in the billions. This was a key part of Baku's rebranding effort. You can't present yourself as a glamorous international destination when one of your central districts looks like the set of a Mad Max movie. So, the government and its chosen developers went all in. They produced stunning architectural models and CGI fly-throughs showcasing a green, pedestrian-friendly paradise rising from the ashes of industrial filth. It was a story of redemption, of turning black into white, pollution into prosperity. And to be fair, parts of it have actually been built. If you visit Baku today, you can see some of the promised modern apartment buildings and office blocks. The Baku City Mall is real, and the new boulevard offers some pleasant views. So you might be thinking, John, this doesn't sound like a failure, it sounds like a success. And you would be partially right. But the key to understanding these projects is looking at what was promised versus what was delivered, and for whom. The original vision was for a vibrant, integrated community. But much of what has been built feels sterile and disconnected. The promised Parisian quarter feels less like Paris and more like a theme park's imitation of it. Many of the residential units are high-end luxury apartments, priced far out of reach for the average Azerbaijani citizen. So instead of creating a new heart for the city, it has created an exclusive enclave for the wealthy, a gleaming district that many locals can only look at from a distance. Furthermore, the project's progress has been slow and uneven. While the showpiece buildings along the main avenues are complete, venture just a little off the beaten path, and you'll find areas that are still underdeveloped. Empty plots of land where grand plazas were supposed to be. The ambitious timeline for completion has been pushed back repeatedly. The promise was a fully realized, thriving new city district, but the reality is a patchwork of finished luxury, stalled construction, and lingering emptiness. There are also persistent questions about the human cost. The Black City wasn't just an industrial zone, it was also home to communities of people living in informal settlements. The redevelopment process involved displacing many of these residents, with reports and criticisms from human rights groups about inadequate compensation and forced evictions. The whitewashing of the Black City wasn't just environmental. For many, it was social, erasing the poor to make way for the rich. So, Baku White City is a complex beast. It's not a total failure like the Khazar Islands, but it's a profound disappointment when measured against its own lofty goals. It succeeded in cleaning up a polluted area and building some impressive structures, yes. But it has largely failed to create the inclusive, vibrant community it promised, instead delivering a sanitized, socially stratified district that feels more like a gilded cage than a living city. It's a project that looks great on paper and in photographs, but up close, you can see the cracks in the facade. Nothing says we've arrived on the world stage quite like hosting a major international sporting event. It's a chance to show off, build shiny new infrastructure, and bask in the global media spotlight. Azerbaijan has enthusiastically embraced this strategy, hosting the inaugural European Games in 2015, the Islamic Solidarity Games in 2017, and several Formula One Grand Prix races. And to host these events, you need stadiums. Big, expensive, state-of-the-art stadiums. Enter the Baku Olympic Stadium. Completed in 2015 at a cost of over $600 million, this 68,700-seat behemoth is genuinely impressive from an architectural standpoint. It's sleek, modern, and looks fantastic when it's lit up at night. It served its purpose beautifully during the European Games opening ceremony. The problem isn't the stadium itself, the problem is what happens on the other 364 days of the year when there isn't a major international event in town. After the Games packed up and left, the stadium has struggled to find a purpose. The national football team plays some of its matches there, but they rarely, if ever, come close to filling it. The local Football League games are typically played in much smaller venues because the demand simply isn't there. For most of the year, this magnificent $600 million structure sits largely empty, a colossal white elephant on the outskirts of the city. Its maintenance costs are enormous, a constant drain on public funds, and it's not the only one. For the European Games, other venues were also built or extensively renovated, like the National Gymnastics Arena and the Baku Aquatic Center. These are world-class facilities, no doubt. But how many world-class gymnasts and swimmers does Azerbaijan have to keep these venues busy year-round? The answer is, not enough. They are fantastically expensive to maintain and see very little use outside of the occasional, heavily subsidized international competition. This is a classic problem seen around the world, from Athens to Rio de Janeiro. A country gets caught up in the Olympic dream, spends billions on purpose-built venues, and is then left with a legacy of debt and useless buildings once the two-week party is over. Azerbaijan walked into this trap with its eyes wide open, seemingly convinced that if you build it, they will come. But they haven't. At least not in the numbers needed to justify the expense. Public criticism has been simmering for years. While the government promotes these stadiums as symbols of national pride and athletic prowess, many Azerbaijanis see them for what they are, extravagances. They question why hundreds of millions of dollars are being spent on a stadium that sits empty most of the time, when that money could have been invested in healthcare, education, or improving infrastructure that people actually use every day. It's a perfectly valid question. The irony is that these venues, intended to project an image of a dynamic and thriving nation, now project something else entirely. They project waste. They are monuments to a fleeting moment of glory, paid for with a long-term mortgage of public money. Driving past the magnificent but silent Olympic Stadium, one gets the sense of a grand party where the hosts spent all their money on decorations, but forgot to invite enough guests. Ultimately, these stadiums represent a fundamental miscalculation. They were built for an international audience, with little thought given to their long-term domestic utility. They are solutions to a problem Azerbaijan didn't really have, a lack of massive, empty arenas. And so they stand, pristine and underused, perfect symbols of a development strategy that often prioritizes image over substance and spectacle over sustainability. If you're going to build giant stadiums and host international events, you need somewhere for all the expected visitors to stay. This logic led to a massive boom in luxury hotel construction in Baku, particularly in the run-up to the 2012 Eurovision Song Contest and the 2015 European Games. The plan was simple: build a ton of five-star hotels, attract a flood of wealthy tourists and business travelers, and watch the money roll in. It's a field of dreams, but for hospitality. This resulted in a forest of gleaming new hotels sprouting up across the capital. Names like the Four Seasons, the Fairmont, located in the iconic Flame Towers, the JW Marriott, and Hilton all planted their flags in Baku. These weren't just hotels, they were palaces of opulence. Marble lobbies, rooftop pools with panoramic city views, and rooms costing hundreds, if not thousands, of dollars a night. The city was preparing for a permanent tourism boom that would fill every last one of these luxurious rooms. The problem is, that permanent tourism boom never quite materialized. Yes, there are spikes in occupancy during major events like the Formula One race. But for the rest of the year, Baku's hotel market is massively oversaturated. There are far more five-star hotel rooms than there are five-star tourists to fill them. This has led to a fierce price war and incredibly low occupancy rates for much of the year, especially outside the peak season. One of the most tragic examples of this overreach is the story of the Kempinski Hotel Badamdar. It opened with great fanfare, a sprawling complex with hotel rooms, apartments, and extensive wellness facilities. It was supposed to be a premier destination, but it struggled from the very beginning. Plagued by low occupancy and financial difficulties, it limped along for a few years before the Kempinski Group pulled out. The hotel has since been rebranded and passed through different management, but its troubles are symptomatic of the entire sector. This isn't just a private sector problem either. The government was a key driver of this construction frenzy, encouraging investment and sometimes participating directly. The belief was that sheer supply of luxury accommodation would somehow create its own demand. That's like buying 1,000 tuxedos in the hope that it will force people to throw more black-tie galas. It's just not how it works. The result is a huge amount of capital tied up in buildings that are underperforming and in some cases bleeding money. Think of the wasted resources, the construction materials, the labor, the land, all poured into creating these temples of luxury that now struggle to justify their existence. For every tourist enjoying a cocktail by a rooftop pool, there are dozens of empty rooms, silent and dark. These hotels were built for a future that hasn't arrived, based on projections that were, to put it charitably, wildly optimistic. The visual of it is striking. You can walk through parts of Baku and see these magnificent, imposing hotel buildings, their lobbies gleaming and empty with more staff than guests. They are beautiful, hollow shells. They were built to signal Baku's status as a global hub, a city on par with Paris or London. But instead, they signal a profound misunderstanding of the market and the dangers of event-driven development. So while a tourist might enjoy the cheap luxury, the bigger picture is one of economic folly. These abandoned and underused hotels are another set of monuments in Azerbaijan's collection of pointless projects. They stand as a testament to the idea that just because you can build a five-star hotel, it doesn't mean you should, especially when you decide to build 20 of them all at once. Finally, let's talk about something that should, in theory, be the opposite of pointless highways. Good roads are the arteries of a nation, connecting cities, facilitating trade, and making life easier for everyone. They are fundamental. So when a country invests in new highways, it's usually a good thing. Unless, of course, those highways don't actually go anywhere, or simply stop in the middle of a field. Welcome to the frustrating world of Azerbaijan's unfinished highways. One of the most notorious examples is the Baku-Kuba Russian border highway. This is a crucial transport corridor, the main road connecting Azerbaijan's capital to its northern neighbor, Russia. A project was launched to upgrade and expand this vital artery into a modern, multi-lane motorway. Work began, sections were built, and then it just stalled. For years, parts of the highway have remained incomplete, creating a bizarre and dangerous patchwork of old road and new. Imagine driving at high speed on a brand new, perfectly paved four-lane highway, only for it to abruptly end, forcing all traffic to merge suddenly onto a crumbling two-lane Soviet-era road. It's not just inefficient, it's incredibly dangerous. These unfinished sections create bottlenecks, cause accidents, and lead to immense frustration for drivers and commercial haulers who rely on this route for their livelihood. And this isn't an isolated case. Other major road projects across the country have suffered a similar fate. The Alat-Astara Highway, intended to connect Azerbaijan to Iran in the south, has also faced significant delays and funding issues, with long stretches left unfinished for extended periods. These aren't rural backroads. These are supposed to be the country's primary international transport links, part of larger regional connectivity projects. So what's the problem? As with everything else on our list, it's a toxic cocktail of factors. The 2015 oil price crash hit the state budget hard, and infrastructure projects were among the first casualties. Funding simply evaporated, leaving contractors unpaid and construction sites abandoned. You can't pave a road with good intentions, as it turns out. You need actual asphalt, and that costs money. But it's not just about money. Allegations of corruption and mismanagement have plagued many of these projects. Contracts are often awarded to companies with close ties to the ruling elite, with little transparency or public oversight. This can lead to inflated costs, shoddy workmanship, and a general lack of accountability when things go wrong. the money that is allocated doesn't always end up where it's supposed to. The impact on ordinary people and the economy is profound. A journey that should take a few hours can turn into an all-day ordeal. Businesses that depend on reliable transport suffer from delays and increased costs. The promise of a modern, efficient transport network, a key pillar of economic development, remains unfulfilled. Instead, people are left with roads that are, in some places, worse and more dangerous than they were before the upgrades began. These half-built highways are perhaps the most infuriating of all these pointless projects, because their purpose is so practical and their failure so tangible. A silent stadium or an empty hotel is a symbol of waste. An unfinished highway is a daily, bone-jarring, life-threatening nuisance. They are a constant reminder to the people who have to use them that the government's grand plans have left them stranded in the slow lane. They are quite literally roads to nowhere. So, there you have it. From a mirage of a city in the sea, to gleaming stadiums with no one to cheer in them, to highways that stop dead in their tracks. Azerbaijan's landscape is dotted with monuments to ambition, but many of them are also monuments to failure. These projects were sold to the public as steps towards a glorious modern future, but have ended up as costly, and in some cases, comical white elephants. They represent billions of dollars in oil wealth spent not on sustainable development, but on chasing prestige and building a facade that is, upon closer inspection, cracking under its own weight. It raises a fundamental question about national development. Who is it all for? Are these mega projects truly meant to benefit the average citizen, or are they vanity projects designed to impress a small international elite and enrich an even smaller domestic one? While the nation's leadership points to the shiny new buildings as proof of progress, many Azerbaijanis are left navigating crumbling infrastructure and wondering when the benefits of the country's vast wealth will finally trickle down to them. The gap between the gleaming skyline and the reality on the ground remains vast. These projects are a powerful, if expensive, lesson in the dangers of putting image before substance. They show what happens when planning is driven by ego rather than need, and when accountability is in short supply. Which of these projects surprised you the most? The billion-dollar ghost islands, or the simple, infuriating highway to nowhere? Share your opinion in the comments below. Because as we've seen, Azerbaijan's skyline may be impressive, but behind the glass and steel, some dreams remain unfinished.